You ever feel completely invisible in a room full of people? That's the question that first brought me to Ethan Ward, not literally, but in a way that changed everything. I didn't know it yet, but the night I first saw him, sitting alone in a dim corner of a New York diner, would define the rest of my life. My name is Mia Carter. I was 22, working long shifts to keep my mother's medical bills paid and my younger sister in school. Life had a rhythm of struggle, survival, and quiet desperation. But that night, life threw me something I didn't expect. Someone whose loneliness mirrored my own, but on a scale I had never imagined. Ethan Ward was 46, a billionaire, a man whose name alone made the financial world tremble. Yet sitting there in the flickering fluorescent light, sipping black coffee, he looked like any other human being exhausted by the weight of existence. And somehow, he seemed lost. I carried his order over to his table, and when our eyes met, something inside me shifted. I had asked the question because it seemed like the only thing worth asking. He didn't smile, didn't answer immediately. Instead, he just looked, really looked, as if seeing me for the first time. I suppose I do, he said quietly after a long pause. And just like that, the hook was set. I had no idea at the time, but that simple exchange would pull me into a world of wealth, danger, and secrets I couldn't have imagined in my wildest nightmares. Ethan began visiting the diner regularly. He always ordered the same thing, black coffee, no sugar, and a quiet corner where he could stare out the rain-streaked window for hours. He never answered calls, never smiled, and the air around him carried a strange mixture of melancholy and authority. I noticed the small things, the tremor in his hand when he reached for the cup, the way his eyes softened when he thought no one was looking. I noticed because I had to. It became a rhythm, him showing up and me serving him. Each day peeling back layers that nobody else got to see. Then one rainy evening, everything changed. He was staring out the window, shoulders hunched, when I approached with his coffee. For reasons I couldn't explain, I asked, "Do you ever feel like you're standing in a place you're supposed to be, but you still don't belong?" His gaze snapped to mine. The room seemed to shrink, the hum of other customers fading into silence. He leaned back, exhaling slowly, and for the first time, he spoke without the protective barrier of business jargon or practice control. "I feel that way almost every day," he admitted. "I've built everything I thought I wanted, and yet, I'm not sure why." I didn't know it at the time, but those words were an invitation. I told him about my life, my mother, my sister, the endless grind of trying to survive in a world that didn't notice girls like me. And then, impulsively, I told him something deeper, something I had never shared with anyone, the fear that I didn't know how to love, to trust, to let anyone in. It was terrifying to say it aloud, but I did. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He just sat there, staring at me, and I saw a crack in his armor, a vulnerability that money, power, and prestige had never been able to hide. "You're brave to say that to a stranger," he whispered, almost to himself. I laughed nervously, but there was truth in his words. Perhaps it was the beginning of something neither of us could have anticipated. Over the next few weeks, our conversations grew deeper. He shared glimpses of his past, the family he lost, the empire he inherited, the business rivals who had tried to destroy him. I listened, learning things about a billionaire world I had never imagined, all while revealing pieces of myself he couldn't see anywhere else. He began trusting me in ways I didn't fully understand, and in return, I felt alive. For the first time, my life felt significant beyond survival. Then came the danger. One evening, after my shift ended, I returned to my modest apartment to find drawers ransacked, my papers scattered, and a note, "Stay away from Ethan Ward, or you disappear." Panic surged through me. My heart pounded as I called him, and within minutes, he was there, pulling me into a hug that was as much protective as it was desperate. "I never imagined they would reach you," he said, "but it's happening, and you're part of this now." That night, he laid out the truth. Someone inside his empire wanted him dead, and my ability to notice details, read people, and understand human behavior made me invaluable. I was terrified. The idea of stepping into a world of power, betrayal, and danger was beyond anything I had ever experienced. But at the same time, I couldn't walk away. Not from him. Not from the chance to be part of something that mattered. Training began immediately. Ethan taught me how the upper class operated, how to read subtle cues, how trust and deception walked hand in hand in every meeting and gala. I watched the way he commanded respect and feared betrayal. And I learned from him, but more importantly, I taught him how to feel again. Slowly, the walls he had built around his heart began to crumble, and a bond formed between us that neither money nor danger could sever. The real test came at a charity gala in Manhattan. Ethan disguised me as a young heiress from a prestigious family, allowing me to mingle unnoticed while observing potential threats. The tension was palpable the moment we arrived. Wealthy elites surrounded us, discussing deals, alliances, and betrayals under chandeliers that glittered like icy stars. And then a whisper in my ear, "You're the girl he's been hiding. Don't screw this up." My blood ran cold, but I forced myself to smile, to play the part, knowing that any misstep could cost both of us everything. Chaos erupted when the lights cut out and the fire alarms blared. The crowd panicked, and Ethan grabbed my hand, holding me tight. "Stay with me. Don't let go," he whispered. And I realized in that moment that our connection was no longer optional, it was survival. We navigated the chaos together, uncovering that the threat came from within his inner circle, a betrayal orchestrated by his own coup to seize control of his empire. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of surveillance, planning, and confrontation. We gathered evidence, using my observations and his influence to expose the conspirators. Every night was tense, every meeting dangerous. We relied on each other completely, and through it, a profound trust formed, a love born not of wealth, but of shared vulnerability and courage. Eventually, the authorities intervened, arrests were made, and Ethan finally felt free in a way he never had. But freedom came with a price. We had to confront the scars left by the betrayal, the fear that lingered, the realization that real power meant nothing without connection. It was then that Ethan looked at me, his eyes unguarded, and whispered, "You saved me. Not just my life, my soul." I realized the truth of it. We had rescued each other. I had given him the courage to trust, to feel, to love again. He had given me the chance to step beyond survival, to be seen, to matter. Together, we built a life that wasn't measured in billions, but in quiet mornings over coffee and conversations that lasted until dawn, in small acts of courage that defined our existence. 6 months later, we were married in a modest Brooklyn church. Ethan had traded the penthouse for a townhouse with a garden, a symbol of the life we were cultivating together. I opened a small psychology practice, helping people like me see the value in themselves. The headlines still told stories of corruption and corporate scandal, but our life together was defined by integrity, love, and resilience. Even when the world questioned our improbable bond, we knew the truth. Love transcends class, wealth, and fear. It exists in trust and vulnerability, in the willingness to stand by someone when everything else falls apart. And it all began with a question in a small diner, a question about invisibility, about belonging, about daring to feel when the world expects you to hide. That question changed everything. It was the spark that ignited a journey neither of us could have imagined, a journey through danger, betrayal, and ultimately redemption. In the end, Ethan and I learned that courage doesn't come from money or status. It comes from facing fear, taking risks, and allowing yourself to be seen. And we learned that the richest life isn't one filled with possessions, but one filled with connection, love, and the quiet knowledge that someone else is there to catch you when the world tries to break you. Sometimes, the person the world overlooks, the quiet, perceptive, seemingly ordinary one, is the only person capable of saving someone else's life. And sometimes, the most powerful people are the ones who need saving the most. Ethan and I found that truth together, and it changed everything. From a single question in a diner to a life built on courage, trust, and love, our story proves that even in a world ruled by greed, fear, and betrayal, Human connection is the ultimate power. And as I look back now, I understand that every choice, every risk, every moment of vulnerability was worth it. Because we discovered something far more precious than money or influence. We discovered each other. And through that, we discovered the meaning of living fully, of loving bravely, and of trusting without fear. That is the story of Ethan and Mia. A story of danger, love, suspense, and the courage to open one's heart when everything is at stake.